Welcome to the Profitable Husband Podcast, where we explore the untold stories of men building empires with their partners. My name's Will Kai. Let's get into it. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Profitable Husband Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest with me, the one and only Chris Harder, a friend, mentor, colleague, founder, all of the things. Yeah. Welcome to the show.
Recruiter trying to recruit you to Newport Beach.
Yes.
Is it
which
working?
Is successful. Yes, we are here.
It's hard not to love it here.
It's very hard to not love it here. We're actually one step ahead and already recruiting our team members from Kentucky to move here with us.
That's awesome.
Well, welcome. Super excited to have you here.
Yeah.
Will you give like a run back of like who Chris is, what the Chris and Lori story is, and just like bring me up to date?
That's a big question. First, thanks for having me. Means
Absolutely.
a lot. Let's do this. Chris, I don't want to speak in the third person. That's terrible. I'm Midwest born and raised. And when you're raised in the Midwest, you get really good things like family values, good work ethic, grit. Winters kind of teach you, like they harden you a little bit, stuff like that. And then if you can take those traits and move out to where all the action is, East Coast, West Coast, I feel like that's the best 1-2 punch. And that's basically what Lori and I did, because Lori's also Midwest born and raised, so has all those same great traits. Now, the journey getting out here is crazy. It's not as simple as it sounds when I say that. One, we'll have been married for 20 years, coming up this August soon. And in those 20 years, you become such different people that you have to choose to keep growing together. Mm-hmm. So that's challenge number one. Challenge number two, when you just grow up somewhere, it's hard to leave there. Your friends are there, your family's there. Your family will sometimes try and hold you back from leaving. They think you're abandoning them, or friends may feel that way. And so you've got that pull that's trying to hold you back to this place that you know that is not the place that you're really meant to be and flourish in. Yeah. And I had that feeling since I was a kid. I knew that I was meant for big things. When I was a kid, I would daydream about being a businessman, whatever the hell that was, right? And dream about living in big cities and dream about doing really cool things with really cool people. And I'm talking from like 7 years old on that I can remember that. So I knew I didn't fit in this Midwest setting where I already mentioned all the great things that come from there. But the one thing that's not great is it doesn't foster really, really, really big dreaming. Now, there's successful people there and there's incredible people there. But let's be honest, it's not the epicenter of the biggest dreams and the biggest doers. So I knew I had to get out of there. And when I met Lori, she knew she had to get out of there. And that was one of those things that we had in common. Like if someone's looking for their significant other right now, we were nothing like the people that we are right now. We just had a few core things in common. One, we were really big dreamers, and we knew we wanted to live somewhere like big city where we could expand that. Yep. Two, we had fitness in common at the time. Okay. Three, this is not what we have in common anymore, but we both love to party. And so that was kind of the core. Like we were either in the gym or we were going out or we were dreaming and scheming what our future life would look like. Yeah. And that was enough for us to lock arms and take a bunch of risks and continue to grow together and end up out here.
Wow. When you guys found each other, were you guys living in the same place in the Midwest?
Lori, so we met at a gym.
Okay.
I was living in Green Bay, Wisconsin at the time. About 100,000 people, but like small town 100,000. Okay. And Lori was the new girl at the gym. And she hates this story because she was such a bitch to me. Okay. But rightfully so. She walked in and the front desk guy hit on her. And then a few minutes later, she's trying to work out and a guy made her take her headphones off mid-set and hit on her. And then I was walking out and she was parked right next to me. And I simply said, I'm like, hey, you new here? And she looks at me, she's like, yep. And got in the door and got in the car and like closed the door.
Wow.
And so I was like, oh, this chick sucks. Like, you know, I'm not going to talk to her
Reasonable.
again. But then we kept seeing each other over and over and over again. And finally, like 2 months later, she came up to me at the water fountain and was like, hey, I never got your name. And that was kind of the start of the friendship that turned into the relationship that we have right now.
Wow. What were you guys like were you in your 20s, 30s at the time?
She's 21. I was 24.
Wow.
Long time ago.
Wow.
And that's 23 years ago.
Yeah.
Like think about how much changes in that time. And our first date was I made up that I had tickets to a Packer game because there's nothing else to do in Green Bay. And this is think about this, pre-internet, pre-StubHub. I mean, there's internet, but like pre-StubHub, pre-Ticketmaster. You can't just get tickets somewhere.
Yeah.
There's no resale market. And Lambeau Field has a 60-year waiting list for tickets. So I lied to her. I'm like, hey, I've got tickets to this game. I don't know what I was thinking my plan was going to be. Do you want to go this Sunday? She's like, yeah, actually. And I was like, oh, shit. She said yes. So now I got to get tickets. And so I called every single friend. Luckily, I was friends with like a bunch of the Packers that played.
Okay.
I got a set of Packer players' tickets. So I got that covered. But then the morning of, she calls me and she's like, you're never going to believe this. She was down in Milwaukee, like 2 hours south.
Okay.
And she says, my car got broken into last night. I don't think I'm going to be able to make it back for the game. And I thought, she stood me up. Like I knew it. You know what I mean? And I thought like her story was bullshit, but it wasn't. About halftime, here's this janky Ford Taurus comes racing up into the driveway, and the driver window was totally smashed out with a black plastic garbage bag over it. And she drove 2 hours on the highway like that, trying to make it back for the second half of the game.
Wow.
I totally didn't expect her to show up. And she did, and we went to the second half of the game, and there's history after that.
Wow. At what point then did you guys like go from partiers, gym goers, all of that? What was the moment when one of you or individually, how did you get into business after that?
I'll tell you a moment that'll kind of personify your question. We had been, we dated for 3 years, and we had been married for a couple of years, and we're living in Milwaukee now at the time, kind of bigger city. 1.5 million people.
That's huge.
And we had just gotten back from going out, and then after we'd go out, we'd go to an after bar, we'd go get food. It's like 4 a.m, 4:30, and we're just crawling in bed. And I remember rolling over to her and saying, I feel so bad for the fucking losers that ever stopped doing this. And when I say that now, I fucking cringe. It's the dumbest thing that could ever possibly come out of somebody's mouth. You know what I mean? But at the time, that's an example of like where our mindsets were. Like we thought the greatest possible night was rolling back home at 4:30 a.m.
Yep.
And saying we felt bad for the people that ever stopped doing that.
Yeah.
And now it's a joke to hear myself say it, because now we get in bed at like 9:30. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because Becca and I have somewhat of a similar story in that we met really young and were immediately connected on partying and scheming is what we say.
Yeah.
Selling drugs, selling concert tickets, getting into shows. I was a promoter. We both got fake IDs right when we turned 15, and we're starting like going out to bars, all these things. And we met, didn't start dating for a couple more years. And then our first night, we ran into each other at a rave, both rolling, ended up going and stealing boxed wine from a mini mart and sleeping in a church parking lot together. And we tell this story sometimes when people meet us now, and it's like, what the absolute fuck? Like, how did you go from this to that? And it truly is like one of those moments where you can come together, and as a partnership, I think even more powerfully than an individual can say, we're going to pivot.
Yeah.
It's not going to look like, we might not even have any idea.
Right.
I'm curious, when you think back to being like that 7-year-old starting to think about business, like Christopher is going to be a businessman. What did that look like? What was that like vision? Not even knowing business
I had
yet.
posters on my walls of, all the typical cars back then.
Okay.
So this is Lamborghini Countach, Porsche 911 Turbo, Ferrari Testarossa. That's about all there was back then. It's not like today where there's all these other supercars, right? So normal kid, posters on the wall. I daydream that I was going to have those cars.
Okay.
Here's how weird of a kid I was. I would make my mom drive me around from car lot to car lot so I could go look at the cars.
Okay.
I would read the Sunday classifieds, which most people listening wouldn't even know what that is. Pre-internet, pre-Craigslist, pre-cars.com, pre-anything. On Sunday, every house for sale, every car for sale would be in something called the classifieds. And I would have it memorized. I could tell you every great car for sale, every great house for sale. Like, I dreamt about nice things. I would make my mom drive me around the richest neighborhood so I could look at the houses or go to open houses as like a 10-year-old.
Wow.
And I mean, shout out to mom being cool enough to do all that. But I already knew that I was really drawn to nice things and whatever that lifestyle must have meant at that young of an age. And I wasn't surrounded by this stuff. So it's not like it rubbed off on me.
Yeah.
There wasn't Instagram where I saw other people doing it. I didn't live in these neighborhoods.
Yeah.
At this time, we were living in a town in northern Wisconsin of 9,000 people.
Wow.
So it's not like there's a bunch of wealth to be seen. I just intuitively had it in me that these were the things I wanted.
Wow.
And was somehow drawn to them. And that was the carrot that made me work really hard and hustle, like the reference that you did before. Find any way to make money, experiment with businesses. I started out in banking and just crushed my career way beyond my age.
Okay.
Those were the carrots that made me take action and do all that stuff. So I always tell people, don't judge the things that motivate you and don't judge the things that are motivating somebody else. They'll mature eventually, but why rob them of that drive? Why rob them of that motivation right now? Why, if somebody is excited because they want a certain car or a certain watch or a certain bag, sure, you may look and judge that now, but there was probably a time that you were really driven by something material like that as well.
Yeah.
And if you're not first driven by something, then you're not going to do what it takes to become somebody. And I think we see that in a lot of people. You can put people in two categories. People you can tell are clearly driven and they're willing to do whatever it takes to reach that dream.
Yeah.
And then people that might say, oh, that'd be nice, but they're not driven by it. And they sure as hell aren't willing to do whatever it takes to reach that dream.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot more fucking work than anybody thinks to get there. And most people aren't willing to do it.
Yeah. So have those like material items, watches, cars, things like that, do you feel like those are still like guiding principles of going up against a launch or going into launching something new or adding something into your guys' kind of ventures? Are you still working towards those goals?
At 47, I thoroughly enjoy those things, but they don't drive me anymore. They're not my why for getting up. They're not my carrot. There's no one thing that I want in particular that I'm working towards. We've reached a place financially where you have enough things that you've wanted. And you realize they're cool, they're enjoyable, but you kind of yearn for something more.
Yeah.
So like what drives me right now is to build Frello, our fintech company, and sell it. I haven't taken a company of my own from inception to selling it, and preferably for 9 figures or more.
I would love that.
Yeah, you'd love that as an investor, right? And that's what drives me right now is it's these accomplishments. So my life won't change when we sell that. We probably won't have a different home. We probably won't have, and maybe we will, but I've already done the multiple homes thing. Matter of fact, we sold them all.
Yeah.
Here's one lesson related to what we're talking about. You learn a lot of things is a lot of hassle and a lot of headaches. And
ain't that the truth?
You almost have to go through a rite of passage because so they'll hear me say this right now, but it's not going to sink in. It's not going to stop them from wanting a lake house and a Scottsdale house and a beach house here and all these things and boats and cars and all that. It's not going to stop them from wanting it. They have to experience it for themselves. And this is okay. This is the part of the journey that once you get everything, you just get used to it. It loses its significance and it actually becomes a burden.
Yes.
Right. So when I sell this company, it's not going to change our life in any material way. We will be able to take care of our loved ones a little bit more securely for more generations.
Okay.
We'll have more choice. This is the best thing that money can buy. We can get down this topic later if you want, but the best thing money can buy is choice.
Yeah.
And it'll grant me that dopamine hit of accomplishment, of building something from scratch, turning it into massive value, and being able to sell that.
Yeah.
And then after that, there'll be some other kind of accomplishment that'll chase down.
Totally.
But it's not things anymore.
What is how did you go from like a thriving banker into now being an investor in lots of companies? You have masterminds, coaching, your own fintech company. How did it go from 0 to 100 so quickly?
This is interesting. Well, it wasn't quickly. I mean, look, let me give you the timeline. I got kicked out of college for partying too much. I went there to play baseball, got kicked off the team all the time. I was an absolute wreck. And after 2.5 years, they said, don't come back. And this is one of those colleges that as long as you paid, they would take your money. Like nobody gets kicked out of this college. So I got kicked out of college after 2.5 years. I was excited because I already wanted to be out building things and participating in the economy. And my parents were mortified. They thought my life was over. And I went and I got a job at a car dealership, like the biggest car dealership in town. Remember, small town.
Okay.
And it was there that I spent 1.5 years learning sales and leadership. And if you can learn those two things, you can write your ticket anywhere. You learn those two traits really, really well, sales and leadership. You'll be able to do whatever the hell you want, figure out whatever the hell you want, accomplish whatever the hell you want. Now, there's more lessons along the way, but those are two of the core ones right there. I learned sales because I was so hungry that I was willing to listen to every sales trainer, every sales person, you name it, who was willing to lend me a tip there.
Yeah.
I would literally ask them. And, here I was at the time, probably 21 or whatever. And it took me just 3 months out of 25 guys to become the top salesperson.
Okay.
Then they promoted me to the finance department, where it's really just more sales. You're selling interest rates and warranties and all this stuff. Yep. And it was there that I had a little 2-man team that was below me, and I had to learn how to lead them. And there were guys that were older than me, so they didn't want to be led by me. They thought, this little shit kid is my boss, not a chance.
Yeah.
And that was one of the toughest things to learn, is how can I get these two pissed off guys who think they should have my job to want to work together as a team. And what did I do? Started listening to books. I started asking people for help. There was one particular guy, the whole world will never know who this guy is, but I know who he is. He made a huge difference in my life. Ron Vigil. He took me under his wing, and he's like, hey, here's why they're reacting that way. Here's what you can do. Like, he cared enough to kind of mold me and shape me. And the difference in my life that an unsung hero like a Ron Vigil made, insurmountable. Yeah. Because he taught me those two core skill sets and took me under his wing. So it went from getting kicked out of college to learning those two skill sets in the car business to then wanting to get into banking because this big mortgage boom was happening. And I had friends that were making a lot of money. So of course I wanted to go make a lot of money. Yep. Remember, no college degree, was supposed to have one to get that job. So I lied to get the interview. Okay. And then in the interview, I kind of just sold my way into the job. I remember sitting down, and the guy who was hiring, his name was Todd. And Todd plays a role in my life, beyond this. But he was the guy interviewing me, his name was Todd. And Todd said, hey, listen, man, I've already filled the spot, but you were on the schedule, so let's talk. And I thought, the fuck you have? Like, this is mine. I want this job. And by the time I left, I had a start date. I had everything. Wow. And that shows you, what does that go back to? It goes back to sales and even charisma and presentation, like learning how to present yourself. Yeah. Absolutely matters. And that's how I got into banking, a job I shouldn't have had in the first place. Started out as a beginner level loan officer and crushed that job. So then they noticed that, and I was able to move up quickly into the next level up, senior loan officer, into an assistant manager, into running some branches, into running some districts, into running some divisions. And they would, at this time, obviously, they knew about my education background. Yeah. They would send me away to these abbreviated finance and leadership college curriculums. So they'd send me to UNC Chapel Hill. Okay. I'd spend 2 weeks at a time there, 3 different times per certification. And I would use that education and everything that I was doing at the bank to chase down the next promotion, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And I think I did it because I was so hungry for that lifestyle. Yeah. Back full circle to what we started this with, where I wanted that really, really, really nice life. Now, this was a double-edged sword. This is important for everybody, because the thing that drove me to be the fastest rising executive out of 330,000 employees at the world's biggest bank at the time, HSBC, was also the thing that destroyed me, because I wanted that lifestyle so bad I was living beyond my means. Yeah. And there was nobody that gave me any guidance not to. I'm sure somebody along the way said something like, you shouldn't buy that or whatever. But I just heard the dumb bullshit that you hear growing up, like, the best investment you ever make is your home. That's a fucking lie. Yes. And I can prove it with math. And the bigger the home you get, the more it'll appreciate, right? So I'm like, I'm going to get the biggest home I can because it'll appreciate even more. Like, I'm making a good decision somehow. Yeah. And I just followed this traditional advice and bought the nice cars and, bought too much of a home and all. And then the recession happened in 07, 08. Okay. And the music stopped, and I was left holding a bag of shit. Yeah. And I spent a year flying around, closing down branches, lost, they shut off the bonuses, they shut off everything. My salary wasn't enough to pay all of our bills. Yeah. So while I was flying around, becoming miserable, closing down bank branches, I laid off 1,000 people one by one by one over the course of that year.
Face to face?
Face to face, just like this. I'd walk into the bank branch. I say, hey guys, By now, you know why I'm here. Very sorry to be doing this. I will call you each into this room. I will let you know what your severance package looks like. I will answer any questions that you have. And again, I'm incredibly sorry. Now, remember, young kid, they're like, who's this motherfucker coming in? And I had people cry. I had people scream. I had people be mad. I got every reaction you possibly could imagine. And the one that stood out was this one girl. She's probably in her late 20s. She was kind of smiling as I'm like, I'm very sorry to do this. Here's your severance package. And I'm like, I'm sorry. Why are you smiling? And she goes, well, when I came in today, I was going to quit. And now I'm getting like 3 months severance. And I reach across the table. I'm like, fuck yeah, you are. And I gave her a high five.
Damn.
That was the highlight of that year. Because the rest of the year, I gained 30 pounds. Couldn't keep up on our bills. My marriage was horrible because I was on the road and I was, gained weight and I didn't like myself. So I was a miserable person. So when I'm a miserable person, I'm miserable to Lori and I'm miserable to be around. And finally, I just came home one day and I said, babe, we need to sell the house, walk away from the rental properties. We short sold the house. So for people that don't know what that is, it's where you can sell it for less than you owe. It's like one step short of foreclosure. And get rid of all the cars except for one car that was so far upside down, we couldn't even afford to get rid of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And start over in a tiny little 900 square foot studio mother-in-law suite in a condo building in uptown Minneapolis.
Okay.
And that was our launching off point, if you will.
Wow. And then did you guys both go into online business at the same time? And how did you as such kind of like a powerful businessman, even at that time, how did you navigate both launching brands and also supporting Lori in that?
Not at all, man. I was broken. I was a shell of the person with all the swagger and confidence and vision that I was up to that point. Think about it. I lost my identity.
Yeah.
My identity was, what am I driving? Where do I live? What's my next promotion? How many people do I manage?
Yeah.
What's my title? That's where I derived my value from. What kind of provider am I? And when this all happened, I was stripped of any kind of identity. I didn't know what was next. I remember I'm a college dropout, just lost everything. I mean, I had zero left in the tank, zero swagger.
Yeah.
Not to mention I was burnt out because to get to the point where I was a hustle.
Yes.
Right. And Lori, I remember when I came home, I'm like, babe, we got to sell the house. We got to sell everything. We got to start totally from below zero again. She could have reacted anyway. She could have said, fuck you. She could have left. She could whatever. Because she was surprised.
Yeah.
Because I ran the finances, not her. And after pausing and being quiet for a while, I remember the first words out of her mouth. She looked at me and she said, I will never let this happen again. Now, up to this point, she never really had any kind of job, a couple front desk jobs or something once in a while.
Wow.
But I would get a promotion every 6 months to a year and move her and say, babe, here's a house. Make us a home. I got to get on a plane.
Wow.
And 6 months later, babe, we're moving this town. Pick out a new house. Babe, we're moving again. Pick out a new house. So she never had a chance. And she didn't have an upbringing that really cultivated the chance of a career either. And this was the moment that she came to life. She said, I will never let this happen again. She'd always been interested in fitness, back to one of those core things we had in common. And she said, I'm going to go build this big fitness career. And so she started competing in fitness.
Okay.
And she went and got her trainer cert and started learning how to be a trainer at a big box gym that paid her $6 per half hour session.
Would you look
Let
at
that shit sink in. And, this is 2008 probably.
Pairs with the recession.
Yeah. So this is long ago, but not long ago.
Yeah.
Imagine making $6 per half hour session. But she was willing to do it to learn how to be a trainer.
Yeah.
And then as soon as she felt like she had enough knowledge there, she went and opened her first gym. And this was the jankiest, nastiest basement of a strip mall.
Okay.
That one of her clients said, hey, I've got this basement of this chiropractic office. Here's a chiropractor. You're welcome to set up your gym down there. And we did 3 mirrors. One of them was broken, all resistance bands, just stuff that we could afford.
Right.
I remember Lori's first client coming down. It was a woman in a new Range Rover, and Lori was so embarrassed of her gym. She's like, oh, it's like this because it's all studs and rafters.
Yeah.
She's like, oh, well, we're mid-remodel.
Okay.
And you
got to fake it till you make it.
Yeah, zero plans of remodeling that thing, right? But that was her start of entrepreneurship, was I'm going to start this gym. And I was still broken. I went and I took a partnership in a little mortgage brokerage with that same guy, Todd, that hired me back when I interviewed.
Full circle.
Now, let's put my journey on pause and stay with Lori's for a minute.
Yeah.
Lori realizes quickly, I can only train just so many people and I'm capped out on what I can make. So we said, what if you wrote little workouts for them, a one size fits all, and you demonstrate how to do them in one of your sessions, and they could do them all the days that they couldn't afford to be at the gym with you. That became the beginning of one of the first massive online fitness businesses out there.
Okay.
Because it went from Lori writing an email of, here's the workouts, completely, just horrible looking email.
Yeah.
To one of her clients saying, would you mind if I ever took these and cleaned them up each month for you? Like a PDF.
Yeah.
To filming them so people could have the demos. To also sharing on Facebook at the time. Like, hey, I've got these workouts. You can do them from anywhere.
Yeah.
This was so early on that there wasn't software, at least not that we knew of. And there wasn't, what do you call it? Kajabi, any of that stuff. So we would stay up till midnight on the last night of the month, and we would manually enter credit cards for hundreds of women when it was just starting.
Wow.
Hoping that the bulk majority of them went through, that we didn't have a number wrong.
Yeah.
And whatever that totaled that we just entered in for that month, it'd be like 2 a.m. by the time we're done, and we'd celebrate like, look, we made, $25,000 this month or whatever, which felt like a ton.
Yeah.
This was also the same time that she started getting lots of covers of magazines.
Okay. Through fitness?
Through fitness,
okay.
Yep. So covers of magazines now are not necessarily a big thing.
Yeah.
Back then, it was a really big thing. We couldn't check out at a grocery store or at a Walmart or whatever without Lori being on those racks right there when you're checking out. And that was pretty cool. And it was a big deal back then. So she had got all of her covers, tons of covers, and tons of articles inside of them. And that grew at the time her Facebook following.
Okay.
Which grew the online fitness program to thousands of women every month.
Okay.
Again, before other people had them. Also grew, she got into network marketing, into supplements.
Okay.
Also grew that significantly because of the audience. And it got so big that while over the course of like 3 years of her doing this, kind of growing this, I was over at this mortgage brokerage that we turned into a mortgage bank that turned out to be pretty big as well. And I was a partner in it with Todd. And I hated my job. I hated my partnership with Todd.
Okay.
For a number of reasons. And it got to the point where Lori said, look at all the momentum we have over here. If you left that partnership over there, if you sold your shares to your partners, I think you could come home and we could make this something special. And that's exactly what I did. So I sold my shares for like 10 cents on the dollar for what they should have been worth.
Wow.
It was my first exit, but it wasn't life-changing. And there's some cautionary tales there too. And came home and said, babe, let's do this. And that became the beginning of us working together, growing online brands, everything else.
Wow.
And it was interesting. We went from being absolutely broke to then the next year, starting to make some money and figure it out, to then 1 year later having our first $1 million year.
Wow.
Which to us was a mountain of money back
100%.
then to have $1 million year. You know what I mean? And back then, $1 million year meant a lot more than $1 million year right now. And so that felt like, oh, we can really turn this into something pretty big. And it just grew from there. Now, we're all say the story sounds great and it sounds like we rode off in the sunset. The parts I'm leaving out are the growth parts. And I understand it's a very long answer to your story, to your question, but the growth parts were this. When I came home and thought, hey, babe, I'm going to do what I'm good at. You do what you're good at. We're going to ride off in the sunset. It was nothing like that at all. It was a disaster. I left a fast-moving, masculine-driven, bros. You ever see the movie Boiler Room?
I haven't, no.
Dude, you're missing out on a good one.
Okay.
That type of setting. And came home and took that same personality and thought I could apply it to my wife and her business, which was her baby.
Yep.
And she wanted to manifest everything. And I got to be in the feeling to make this happen and all this stuff. And I'm like, fuck your feelings. These are the numbers. This is how it works. So it was the worst. We thought we were going to get divorced for sure. The worst 6 to 12 months ever. And it got so bad that we were either going to get divorced or we were going to figure it out. And we sat down, we said, what's the real problem here? She said, I hate the way you talk to me.
Mm.
And I said, how should I be talking to you? And she said, here's what triggers me. It gave me like lines like, it doesn't matter if what you're saying is right, if I can't receive it.
Mm-hmm.
Little things like that, that are actually really big lessons.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, you tell me when it comes to sales, when it comes to a launch, when it comes to marketing, how do you want me to say it to you? Like, give me the words. When do you want me to say it to you? When should I bring it up? When should I not? And then we role played it and practiced it. And I know that sounds cheesy as hell, but putting that effort towards it is what ironed out our communication.
Mm.
And she was right. It doesn't matter what you say if the way you say it can't land on the other person. It doesn't matter if it's right or wrong. It has to be said in a way that they can receive it. And if you can master that lesson in communication, then everything else falls right into place.
Mm-hmm.
And this goes for business partners, romantic partners, friendships, people that work for you, team members. This same application goes for everything that you'll rely on the rest of your life in business.
Yeah. What was it like going into that, being such a, like, let's call it like an alpha male bro salesman, all of that? What did you have to do in terms of healing or like adapting to go into Lori's business internally? Like going from being a sales floor leader, all of that, and then going into that like manifestation, helping a female brand grow. Because I honestly didn't even realize that you went into her brand first.
Yep, I went into her brand first. I had to let go of my ego.
Yeah.
I had to let go of being right. I had to really, I don't mean to keep harping on a lesson, but truly like understand and digest that how you communicate is more important than what you communicate.
Yeah.
I had to start doing self-development. This was my intro to self-development, by the way. When all of this stuff was going on, she dragged me to, actually, no, it was first a coworker was like, hey, there's this thing coming to town called Landmark Forum.
Okay.
I've heard it's really great. You guys should go. I know you're having some trouble. And remember, you use the word perfect, like bro, type A. I was like, I'm not going to some self-development bullshit.
Yeah.
And I came home. I don't know why I mentioned it to Lori. Maybe subconsciously I wanted to go. And she's like, I think we should go. So that's why I say she drags me to this weekend. And I walked into, it's a great answer to your question because this really personifies it. I walked into that 3-day weekend at Landmark Forum, sitting down. If you've ever been, everyone starts sharing their stories into the mic, all their hardships. And I'm like, oh, you suck. You suck. Wouldn't want your life. Holy shit, you're super fucked up. Like really judgmental and a horrible perspective of other people's hardships. To by the end of that weekend, cracked wide open and learning powerful lessons like nothing has any meaning other than the meaning you apply to it. And the concept of building stories, how we build stories around events that happen in our life, and we can choose to reinterpret those stories, relationship stuff, you name it.
Yeah.
That, I don't know if it's still around, and I'm not like advocating for that brand because I hear it gets a little culty when you get into level 2 and 3.
Okay.
But that first weekend was my first experience in self-development that changed everything.
Wow.
And really helped me become who I needed to be. So it went from that to Tony Robbins UPW to everything else after.
Wow. That's wild. I honestly had no idea that was your entry into, would you call it that was your entry into the online space?
Through her, yes.
Yes.
I didn't want to be in the online space.
Right.
To this point in this story, I never had a MySpace.
Okay.
When everyone else did. And I still didn't have a Facebook.
Okay.
I just wanted to be the guy behind the scenes doing the part that Lori didn't want to be.
Yeah.
I had no interest in being a public figure. I was mean to people in high school, so I didn't want them to find me. Like stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And so I wanted to be off the radar. The turning point of that was a couple of things. Lori's business got so big that she said, hey, I like being the front woman and doing the workouts and being on the magazines. I hate the coaching side of it. She said, you have all this leadership experience from when I had huge teams at HSBC and the car dealership and then at the mortgage bank.
Yeah.
She said, you have all of that coaching and leadership experience and you seem to enjoy it. I always did enjoy that part a lot. Yeah. She said, what would happen if you coached all the people that we kind of brought in And I was out there just kind of bringing them all in. I was the net.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I'm open to that. And that led to, well, I guess I need a Facebook. So these people knew who I am. Led to, hey, this is kind of fun. And it's been a lot of years since I've had my own thing and my own drive.
Yeah.
Which then led to joining a mastermind with her. And in that mastermind, they sat me down and basically said, you have all this potential. You're playing small. Look at how you could enhance what you guys want to do and enhance the dreams that you guys have together. If you would just get out of your own way and go all in on building your own persona.
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of me putting myself out there and probably why we're sitting here today.
Wow. That is insane, honestly, and a very cool story. Having heard Lori speak on stage and hearing a little bit more about her, I want to say she calls herself an introvert.
Yeah, mega.
How do you, as the husband behind that, especially going from like relatively, the word nothing is not literal, but nothing to something. How do you support her getting onto stages in front of thousands of people, showing up every day, like behind the scenes? How do you actually support that?
These are great questions. The speaking in particular.
Yeah.
Back to my HSBC days. One of the things that made me climb the ranks faster than everybody else was I realized early on what motivated people. And if I could get them together and get them to collaborate and get them to share ideas, that they would then go back to the office and be that much better off working together. So I started putting together my own one-day training sessions and all this other stuff.
Okay.
While I was at the bank. And I realized I loved being on stage and I loved training. That was my favorite part of the job. So I was comfortable on a stage. Lori was not just fearful of a stage. She was crippled. She couldn't get out, was going to pass out. Still has that today. She's just learned to exercise that muscle around it.
Wow.
And so I said, let's go to a train the trainer to learn how to speak. I think you'll feel better after that. And we went to that weekend and she spent the whole weekend hiding. You know, person by person have to go up there and do their little bit and get feedback. And she was like hiding, was not going to get on that stage. And finally got called up on the last day. And it was torturous for that poor gal. Like, was going to pass out, sweating, stuttering, the opposite of what you see today. But it was at least her first exposure to being willing to step on it. And so then I said to her, what if we just went on every stage together? What if, when we did some network marketing stuff, when we did fitness stuff, what if I was up there side by side with you? Would that help? And so that was an example of like, I know that she'll feel more comfortable if I'm standing up there next to her at any given moment. If she drops the ball, I can take it and run. And assuring her, like, I'm comfortable up here. So there's nothing that can go wrong. If you forget everything, I'll just take it and run with it. And that gave her enough courage to get enough reps to get on enough stages. Then she went to a train the trainer, kind of like a one-year mastermind with Jack Canfield.
Okay.
And he taught her stage techniques and facilitating techniques, which led her to boldly saying, I'm going to start a event for women, an annual event, before there were all of these. And she's the OG of women's events. There's like Tony Robbins events and stuff like that, but no one was doing anything for women. And it was called the Bliss Project. And she just risked it. She said, I'm still not comfortable on stages, but I'm comfortable enough. I need this for me as much as other people need it. And, her following at the time was big enough where she's like, I know I could put a few hundred women into a room. And I want to try this. And still to this day, I don't know like what truly drove that other than just another challenge. So sure enough, we booked the venue, put the money down on it. It was scary. And before anybody was doing this, he pulled together this thing called, and it went on for 7 years.
Wow.
It got to the point where every year it would sell out in like hours. 500 women from 8 different countries would come in and she would facilitate this 3-day transformative, type of event.
Was that teaching them to speak?
No, that was teaching them self-development and fitness and like all these different parts to live a better life. And having the responsibility of knowing that it was her stage that she was paying for and she had to curate the experience, and throwing herself into that level of commitment is what made her choose to get good enough to be able to step on any stage and be able to shine. So sometimes you just got to like make that commitment, put the money down, do it before you're ready.
Calculated risk.
Yeah. And just count on yourself that you're going to somehow show the fuck up.
I love that.
Or pass out.
Yep. So for a lot of people that are listening to this, they are thinking, okay, I maybe as a guy, if I'm listening to this, are coming from construction or sales or something like that. I have some of those sales leadership traits. Beyond bringing in skills to a woman's business, as Lori's business started to take off, were there pieces of ego that you had to leave behind as she started to, take on big wins, take on big stages? Now she has like one of the huge successful podcasts.
One of the biggest in the world.
How has that been for you as like the guy that has wanted to support her, supported her throughout the entire process? Is that weird for you in allowing her to take that huge center stage?
I've always loved it. I thought, and I hear this question, and I hear guys that like, they don't want their significant other to get too big or what. I'm like, what the fuck are you thinking?
Yes.
Like if you've got somebody special and they're willing to do the work, do everything you can to free them up to go out there and shine, because your life will be exponentially better because of it. Your opportunities, who you'll meet, what you'll get to do will be 1,000 times better because this person just needs some extra support to go shine the way they want to shine. I've never understood this feeling of like, I don't want them to outgrow me.
Yeah.
Do the fucking work.
Yes.
Matter of fact, there was a moment where, this is really relevant to what you asked. We were out to dinner once and Lori was growing on a rocket ship.
Okay.
I mean, everything she touched was turning to gold, just in momentum. And I was on a date night sitting across from her in Santa Monica, and our life was really good, but I wasn't doing anything extraordinary or great yet. And she was telling me, I met these awesome people and we're doing this awesome thing and this is going to be so great and I'm so excited about this opportunity. And I was sitting across from her just like this, and I remember thinking to myself, why does everything always have to be so great, so awesome, and the next thing? And in that moment, it's like lightning hit. And I thought, wait a minute, look how excited she is right now. And she's out there working her ass off so we can have a great life. What's wrong with me? This is not a her problem.
Yes.
This is a me problem, that for some reason, this is bothering me or triggering me, that she wants to go do all of these extra great things with these extra great people. And so I didn't say anything to her that night, but I definitely had this moment of like, oh, I've got a problem.
Yes.
And I need to solve this, because it's not going to be long where she'll end up on the moon and I'll still be down here on Earth, and there'll be too far of a distance for us to thrive.
Yes.
And good on my behalf wasn't good enough. Like, you're not going to be able to keep someone who is destined for stardom
100%
and think that you're just going to stick around at good enough.
Yeah.
They're going to absolutely outgrow you and they're going to be uninterested in you. So your desire, if you want the life that comes along with that, and if you love the person and want to see them happy and shine, your desire should be, how do I grow at the same pace as them? So I started keeping my eyes open. I'm like, how could I kind of catch up to her without saying anything to her? And scrolling Instagram, and came across this guy who now I know him, and but back then I didn't. And it was Ty Lopez.
Yep.
And it was his famous viral ad where he's in his garage. And he's like, hey, I'm in my garage, and here's my Ferrari, and here's my Lamborghini. And that caught my attention. So I like cars.
Yep.
And he said, but what my favorite part of his garage, and he turns and pans, and it's walls and walls of books. Okay. He went on to say that he read a book every single day for years as part of his routine, a whole book. And I thought, holy shit, if this guy can read a book every single day and still have all these businesses and all this stuff, then maybe that's how I could catch up. And maybe that's how I could kind of do something to propel myself.
Yeah.
So I was in the bathroom when I saw this, came out of the bathroom, and I got this idea. And I was like, Lori, you're not going to believe this. Totally out of left field. But I'm going to read 30 books in 30 days. Just because I feel like I want to do something to up-level myself. And I remember the look on her face was one of like joy and relief. She didn't say anything like, thank God, or it's about time, or but the look on her face wasn't that she was shocked, wasn't that she thought it was like, how can I support you?
Yes.
And that's what she said. She's like, this is awesome. How can I support you? So we cleared my schedule for a month. Took a couple weeks to plan it out, cleared my schedule for a month. I picked out like the first 4 or 5 books.
Okay.
And I knew I had to be held to following through, or I'd maybe do a week and be like, oh, that was good enough. So I told all of Facebook at the time, I said, hey, listen, I want to read 30 books in 30 days. I need you guys to hold me accountable. And so similar to like when someone runs a marathon to raise money for something.
Once you put it out there, you can't not.
Right. So one, I put it out there, but two, I said, I want to attach this to a cause so that I won't back out of it.
Okay.
And I said, Lori and I will match all of the money that you guys donate to, I think it was Pencils of Promise at the time, to Pencils of Promise. We'll do a match. And I'm doing this as a way to, as like a drive. Like I'll read these 30 books in 30 days if you guys donate money to this cause. And the money poured in. I think people donated just over $20,000, so we matched it.
Wow.
And because I was doing this for a cause, now I couldn't get out of it.
Yeah.
Now I couldn't read 5, 10 books and be like, oh, I did good enough. Now I have to follow through. These people gave their money. And so every day, I said the rules are I'll post the book that I was reading with evidence of me reading it and a quick little summary of like what I did. This was so fucking tough, believe it or not. The reading, like finding the time to do it, I thought was going to be the tough part. It wasn't. I actually learned to have a lot more time on my hands once you cut the bullshit out than you think. The tough part was physically reading. Like I remember the third day, I was like, oh, great. Of course I'm getting the flu, like achy neck, achy shoulders, feeling kind of like I'm coming down with something. And I went to grab that book anyways. And when I went like this, I was like, oh, that's what's causing the achy neck and everything. Like being in this position that I wasn't used to being in. So I had to learn to read standing up. I had to learn how to read lying on my back, like holding the book above me. I had to learn, like Lori would hold the book. And I was a bad reader. It would take me like, I'd read the same page 10 times in a row and couldn't tell you what was on the page. I was that guy. About halfway through this thing, I was in bed trying to finish a book before the end of the day. And Lori looks over at me and she's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm reading. And I'm just cruising like this with my fingers. And she's like, bullshit, give me that. She goes, what'd you just read? And I was able to tell her verbatim for whatever. So it only took a couple weeks of that repetitive motion to be able to start reading really fast and retaining. Okay. So it's amazing what we can do once we apply ourselves to it. And sure enough, went the whole 30 days, read the 30 books, and that totally changed my life. Wow. One, it grew my following significantly. Like that was one of the original things that put me on the map.
Interesting.
Because people shared it all. Like, look what this guy's doing. There are articles about it, etc. 2, it grew me as a person because of the knowledge in the books. 3, and better, it grew me as a person because of learning what it takes to stick to a commitment and make some kind of sacrifice and learn that you have more than enough time in your day if you cut out the bullshit. So that was one of the best, most up-leveling experiences of my life that caught me up to the trajectory that Lori was on and kind of gave me my drive back. Wow. To want to go do significant things at the pace of which she wanted to go do significant things.
Wow. If somebody's listening to this, whether it's an individual or a relationship together, and they are in the time of likely the wife's business or brand taking off, and they're feeling those feelings of discomfort around maybe the guy is not growing or the ebbs and flows aren't equaling out, what would the one tip be for them together to get through that and for the guy to ultimately come to, I think, kind of now in the place that you're in?
This is an important question because we're seeing a rash of people breaking up or getting divorced because one person is on a rocket ship and the other one just isn't holding up their end of the bargain. Yeah. And they become too distant and too radically different people. And we're not kind of seeing this. I know for a fact we're really seeing this. Yeah,
100%. I've coached women through them leaving their partners.
And it only takes
it's very real.
A year or two to have this great divide happen. Yes. Right? In that situation, because that could have been Lori and I, what she did best was she never stopped inviting me along. I'm doing this thing. Do you want to come? I'm going to this retreat. Do you want to come? I've got this exciting thing. Do you want to come? So she never stopped inviting me along, but she also never told me I had to do it, or I was a piece of shit if I didn't want to, or, hey, I'm outgrowing you. You know if someone's outgrowing you. You don't need to be told. You can feel it, even if it's never spoken. And that's your wake-up call to grow the fuck up and do the work to keep up with this other awesome person, or know that you don't deserve them, and you can go have the life that you want to have of mediocrity and doing okay things.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with wanting an average life and doing average things.
Yep.
Just like there's nothing wrong with wanting a great, big, extravagant life with extraordinary things.
Yes.
Everyone's going to have different desires, different journeys. But be honest about what you want. And if what you want is that extraordinary life with that partner that you love, then get the fuck on the rocket. Find some way, like I did with the 30 books in 30 days, and choose to do the work to catch up to them. Or know that you're going to get your ass left behind, and don't be surprised when it happens.
100%. Yeah, no, I definitely resonate with that. Becca and I grew very quickly, and I think that she had a very, she had an easier time with that growth of the virality, the exposure, and also, interestingly, she had a lot easier of a time accepting the money and the growth that came with that. And so I definitely resonate with that, in that when we had our first $1 million year, we were living in LA, and I was at a time where I definitely grew up with a lot of anxiety, depression. It was like multi-generational even coming down.
Lori too.
And when we had that, I remember there would be times where we're driving down PCH, going to like Nobu. We just had a great day. All these sales are coming in, and I'm like, I still feel like shit. Like, this isn't even, if this is the best, I need to seriously look inward and figure some shit out, because we've worked so hard to get to these dreams, and I am not about to be the person that like sabotages us, sabotages you as my partner. And I think that that's something that's very real that a lot of people experience. And I think that a huge part of this podcast is talking about this, because I think it's uncomfortable, and it's also in the unknown, because all of us set out to start businesses hoping that they take off, hoping that one day they're sitting in a seat interviewing somebody, or being interviewed, talking about the success of the business. But I think if you go a couple layers behind that inside of the relationship, there's a lot of individual and kind of developmental growth in the relationship that has to happen. I've definitely experienced that firsthand with growing, her brand taking off, your guys' brands together, now hosting events like the ones that I've come to. What have been the biggest moments of either satisfaction, if it was money or whatever? What were those maybe 3 biggest moments of the last 20 years?
I think this is the big joke on everybody. It's not when she won all the fitness titles. It's not all the covers. It's not when we hit certain numbers in the bank account or milestones. It's not when we got that certain house, or when I bought that certain car. Those are all great dopamine hits.
Yeah.
But the bulk majority of the time is every one of those things felt very, very anticlimactic. I can't stress this enough. You'd think it's going to be some big celebration, or it's very anticlimactic. If you don't stop to celebrate it and acknowledge it, no one else is going to celebrate it and acknowledge it for you. So don't just keep cruising past these things. But also know that our highlights, our favorite moments, have been days spent together by the beach here, and just knowing that we live in our dream city. Having a few close friends that are like some of the greatest human beings in the world, and knowing that I can see them at will because I have choice.
Yes.
I can put them on a plane and we can all fly somewhere, go skiing or whatever, right? Those are the highlights. Those are the top 3.
If you can think of a moment, though, what is that actual climax? Is it like you go to the beach, you have breakfast, you come home, you have sex or something, and it just is like, wow, we're living in this home. I'm going to meet up with a friend later. Like, or it's you're on a ski trip and you have your best buddies with you. Like, was there any moment, if you take away the cars, the money, the bullshit, what was the moment that made you feel the most liberated after building and working so fucking hard to get there?
This is a weird one. My dad died totally unexpectedly in June of 2020.
Wow.
And died of a heart attack. The guy was the epitome of how you'd want to be retired. 72, fit, worked out every day, exercised, like full of purpose in life, most joyful guy on the planet. And he had a blockage in his heart that nobody knew about, and died on the spot working on the dock outside of the beach house in the morning.
Wow.
I got a call while we were up at a cabin in Big Bear, California, at 8 a.m. from his neighbor saying, "Hey, you gotta get home. Something's happened. Your dad just passed away."
Wow.
And we were up there with my brother and his girlfriend and Lori and I and the dogs. Now, this was the height of COVID.
Okay.
No planes, no. Remember, they literally didn't have flights for a long time. No anything. And I had to get home to mom. The ability in a tragic moment to call a friend and say, "Can I book one of your planes? Like one of your private jets. I've got to get home. I don't know how long we're going to be there." To have the freedom. We ended up staying there for like 8, almost 9 weeks.
Wow.
So a little over 2 months that summer. To not have to be anywhere, just to be able to be home with mom and Lori and Nick and his girlfriend and the dogs, and to be able to tell mom, "Hey, don't worry, like we've got it. Like you don't have to worry about anything." To have all of that choice and certainty in that moment, that's the best thing that your accomplishments and money can buy.
Yes.
We were home with mom just hours later, maybe 6 hours from the time we got the call. And remember, it's like a 4-hour flight to the time that I got to go see mom, maybe 6 hours later from California to Wisconsin.
Wow.
And to be able to be there at the drop of a hat and have nothing in your way, not I can't afford the jet, not I don't have the connections, not I got to be back next week for work.
Yeah.
To have none of that in a way, that's the highlight of putting yourself in this type of position.
Wow.
And I'll add one more thing to that too. That day when I got the call and heard that dad died, and I had to go home and tell my brother, worst thing you'll ever do is tell your brother, "Hey, dad died." And chartered the jet and rushed to the airport and all these things. There's so much momentum going on that it doesn't sink in. You don't realize that your dad just died. It's adrenaline. And so the first memory, the first moment I have was the jet was starting to take off the runway, and I looked out the window to my left. And the first time it sank in, holy shit, I'm going home because dad died.
Yeah.
My next immediate thought was, I'm so glad that I don't have any shoulda, coulda, wouldas, and that I didn't leave anything on the table.
Wow.
Other than wishing he was around a lot longer, we prioritized family because we could. We would bring mom and dad out to Santa Monica at the time. We'd rent them a place for 5 months every single year.
Wow.
So we could spend time with them and make memories. We'd go back and see them in the summer. We did epic family holidays at incredible cabins, mansions, if you will, in Park City as a family.
Mm-hmm.
We were memory making machines.
Okay.
And even the little things, the freedom to take a bike ride with dad in the middle of the day, because I could, the freedom to, do dinners when you want, whatever. I looked out the window and I thought, holy shit, I'm so grateful that I didn't leave anything on the table. I squeezed every last drop out of life while he was alive, making memories. And I prioritized it, and I had the ability to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the highlights. When you're out there working a job so you can't see the people you care about, that is the opposite of a highlight. When you don't have the money to go see somebody that you want to go see, that's the opposite of a highlight.
Yeah.
When you fight over finances, that's the opposite of a highlight. When you say, "Oh, I'll get around to, working on that relationship down the road when I retire or when I have time or when I have more money," it's the opposite.
Yeah.
The ability to do those things are the highlights, period.
Yeah.
Better than any car, any home, anything.
100%. Well, first of all, I'm sorry for your loss and thank you for sharing. And I actually really love that it's like a tender moment rather than a material or a launch or like something like that. And I love that. And I think that those memories are super important. And it's cool hearing that also because you are both of my parents' age.
Yeah.
And so
Thanks a lot, asshole.
I think about also though, because now it's my role, my responsibility in some ways to create those memories. They were wonderful in giving them to me when I was a child, but also now through growth financially and through personal development, it is me creating those memories. Do you guys want to come out on my boat? Do you guys want to go on a trip? I'll pay for it. Do you want to go out to dinner? I'll pay for it. And those those memories truly are the things that last.
Yeah.
Where the number, the launch, whatever, it's such a temporary fix.
Totally
it might
temporary.
feel like, wow, I just saw that and holy fucking shit, we just did that. But then like literally 100% within 24 hours, maybe within like 4 hours, it's gone.
Yeah.
And you're like, on to the next, whatever.
It's anticlimactic. And you move on to the next. Literally. I wish people could understand it. Those will not be the highlights.
Yes. And I have always loved hearing from you about you. And I first heard about you in a nuanced approach because Becca went into her first ever event. It was Angie Lee's Pays to Be Brave.
Oh, yeah.
Back in the day.
And when I spoke back there.
When you spoke. And we had been fed, specifically, Becca will always talk about it. I've been fed that same bullshit. I need to buy a freaking house.
Yeah.
I need to buy it quick.
Yeah.
And Becca comes home, and this was like back in our first era of me trying to be a ninja and support her, in that she goes to Pays to Be Brave. I am back at an Airbnb with the dogs, and I'm on the Pays to Be Brave hashtag as Becca, and I'm just engaging, liking, following up with everybody because Becca, similar to Lori, has a hard time sometimes putting herself out there, especially in those live settings. And we thought we were going to be all cool and bring business cards that had a QR code to our website templates awesome. And all this shit. And we're making connections, we're making sales. And I remember being there and her coming home, and we, like children still, went and got some White Claws and hung out and went and watched the sunset in a park. And she's like, there's this guy, his name is Chris, and I love him. He's talking about all the reasons why you shouldn't buy a house and why renting is better. And I was like, sounds like an idiot. Yeah, my dad actually told me that I should buy a house just like him. And so Chris Harder became this name of a voice of reason in some ways in our relationship. And so that was my first introduction to you, started following you. And then Becca, a couple of years ago, starts talking, hey, we should go to this dinner series. We had just had one of those big launches. And she goes, we've never invested into ourselves in any way like this. Chris and Lori are doing this dinner series. It's going to be sweet. There's a mansion. Look at this, all that shit. We're like, let's do it.
Yep.
And I love it because now as I've watched you, I think that there's a point of also needing to find people that do live in a regime of life that you would like to aspire to. And also somebody that has lived through those learned experiences, because I resonate so deeply with even like getting to the point of, I think I need a big house.
Yeah.
Now I have a 7,000 square foot house that's sitting there that I'm not even in because it's too much work, too much house, too much all this shit.
Especially the remodeling you guys are doing.
Yes. Also drawing you away from the beauty of your relationship and your business and the impact that you can make. And what you had said about like, you buy the toys, you buy the boats, the cars, all these things, and you realize that they actually become more responsibility.
Yes, they do.
I am literally in that position right now of like, I got them. I had all this space. So I have a 4-car garage. I got to start filling them. Shit, dirt bike, boat, all these things. And then they start to sit and they need oil changes and all these things. And you're like, man, I'm working to have all of these things. And it's actually completely drawing me away from the other things.
And if you're not careful, it can actually then draw you away from your work.
That's,
so not
that's
just
what I
your
mean
joy.
by the other things, the real things.
Yeah.
So I really resonate with that. Out of all of that, you obviously have built something beautiful together. And I love that. And even though there's, differences, I'm proud of you for doing that. It's super cool to see and to be inspired by, and to even know that what you give and instill to me, I'm able to instill in others. And it really becomes this like waterfall effect of inspiring people and teaching them that the way of life, of a relationship, of business doesn't have to be what you see on TV or on somebody else's lived experience. What is next out of, you have a fintech company, you have a freaking thriving mastermind, you have one-on-one clients, all of these things. What do you feel like now you as a relationship are working towards?
We're trying to figure out the kid or no kid thing.
Okay.
Nothing like waiting till the last minute in life. And that'll probably be our next adventure, is figuring that out. And in what way? We tried IVF for rounds and rounds and rounds, didn't work out.
Yeah.
You spend your whole life trying to not get pregnant, and then you realize it's not as easy as you think.
Yes.
And so whether it's adopt or whether it is you can adopt embryos, you can do all these really cool things.
Yeah.
Probably some version of that.
Okay.
And almost back to what you and I were saying before, you reach a point where you have everything you want and you think, okay, this is anticlimactic.
Mm-hmm.
What else would give it more meaning?
Yeah.
And that's where you realize, oh, more people to share it with.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what it all comes down to.
Well, one total side note on this. So my mom is a midwife. So I grew up around childbirth and babies my entire life. My mom's two best friends both actually ironically live in New York, 49 years old. Both of them have had a baby in the last year.
Oh, yeah.
One of which has had two in the last 3 years.
This is the best part about the coasts. It's like, LA, Newport, or New York. Everyone waits until their 40s anyways to do this. And in the Midwest, it's like a race to have 2 kids and a mortgage.
Yep.
And then, you get out here and like everyone's chill until their 40s.
Yeah.
And so it's normalized out here to be an old ass dad, which I'm going to be grateful for.
You're going to be a great dad, though.
Yeah, of course.
What do you think are going to be those pieces of like all of the learnings that you're going to immediately instill? Like, let's say you have a boy.
Let's be honest. He won't listen. He's going to have his own lessons. My parents try to tell me things that now I realize were spot on and I didn't listen during the time. So I'll do my best. I'll share the knowledge. I think the best thing that our kids will get is the network and the example that we set.
You guys have a pretty mighty fine network.
I think that'll be the best thing that they'll get is our network and the example that we set of what it looks like to achieve something if you want it and the work that'll go behind that.
Having grown up without a ton of money and examples and things like that, let's say you have a teenager, 16, 17 years old, cruising through probably Newport. They're like living big. Are they working a shit job on purpose by your part? Are they getting an old beater of a car? Are you putting them in the Ferrari? Like where do you see, if you have a child and they're at that age of like, it could be opulence or it could be working behind a counter, where do you see wanting your children to be?
I'll never forget when we first moved out here from the Midwest. We were looking for, do we want to live in Santa Monica? Do we want to live in Newport? And we're kind of testing each area out for a week. And high school had just gotten out and we're at this cafe and a brand new Ferrari and a brand new Porsche pulls up with high school kids driving it. And Lori and I were just astonished. You don't even see these cars back in the Midwest, and these high school kids have them. And I remember saying, yeah, as a kid, I would have been thrilled to have these, but I feel like they're being robbed of having anything to look forward to.
Yeah.
And that is like the quest of something. The journey towards something is the good part. It's not getting it. We talked about this before.
Yeah.
Getting it is anticlimactic.
Yes.
And you're robbing these kids of what it feels like to have to go take the journey to get the thing, to have the accomplishment. And I don't pretend to give advice on things I haven't experienced yet. So I spend all of my time now asking all of my wealthy friends that have kids, hey, what are you doing to make sure your kid doesn't end up to being a spoiled piece of shit or entitled or already have all the things? And these are billionaire friends.
Yeah.
And they create microeconomies within the family. They don't try and hide that they have advantage. They don't say, oh, you're going to go clean toilets at whatever. They don't go that far. They create microeconomies. They say, there's still things that need to be done around the house. Sure, we could have somebody else do them, but you're going to do them. And there's going to be a payoff for doing it, right? Whether it's some money or whether it's some freedom or whatever it is. And they encourage them at an early age to go build a business, go take some risk. What ideas do you want to cultivate? And they invest in not fancy transportation, but instead opportunities for them to start that little business, do this little thing. And they learn the ramifications of what's it like when you create a product and it doesn't sell? What's it like if you have to do marketing? What's it like? So that'll be the type of family that we have.
Yeah.
We'll create these little opportunities to have microeconomies for them to learn what the real world is like. And we won't hide the advantage. We'll show them what they can do with it, but they're still going to have to learn the grit themselves.
I love it. I completely agree. I see it as like a complete disservice, if you will, to give the pieces of advantage so early on to, I think that you could maybe supplement and still get really good work ethic and things like that. But overall, I completely agree.
Yep.
It's honestly wild to think about going into being a parent, having the network and the experiences that you guys have now, because I think that the child, whether it's adopted, birthed from you guys, whatever, they will come in to this world with a hell of an opportunity. even just having somebody like you as a dad that's able to push them in the ways that I've seen you push entrepreneurs, friends, all of that, I think that they'll be rock solid.
Well, I'll tell you this. There's not a right way and there's not a wrong way to parent. Okay.
Yeah.
But my personal opinion about myself only, I wouldn't want the young version of me raising and forming the thoughts of a child, because of who I was and the way I behaved back then, and how I saw the world back then. So in my unique case, I'm really grateful that, if and when we go that route, I'll be able to develop a human being from the way I see the world now, not the way I saw it back then.
Yeah, I definitely respect that. I'm trying to think about young Chris, like banker, drinker, going out, fitness.
It was everything to the extreme. That was the problem. It was dream to the extreme, work out to the extreme. We'd spend 3 hours in the gym a day.
Yeah.
It was drink to the extreme, party to the extreme, work to the extreme. That's how I climbed the ranks so quickly at the bank there. I was willing to outwork everybody.
Do you feel like you bring that now into every venture you go into?
Absolutely not. Do I still have the tendency to do things to an extreme? Yes.
Yeah.
But there's a maturity now that catches it early.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point in my age, I know what's important. So I'd rather make sure I catch the sunset than just keep on working. And I've learned the right things in terms of what work needs to get done will still get done.
Yeah.
I had a boss once that he'd give us impossible deadlines. And I'd always say to him, I'd say, Steve, why do you give us such a short amount of time to do so much work? And he'd say, whether I give you a container this big or a container this big, you're going to let the same amount of work swell to fit the container. So I give you a container this big. And I hated him for it, but he wasn't wrong.
Yeah.
And I've kind of taken that. And that's how I manage and run my life now.
I love that. Well, thank you for having this discussion with me.
Yeah,
I really
my pleasure.
appreciate
Thanks for having
it.
me. It's
Absolutely.
Great.
Where can people find you? I'm sure that they'll be interested in you, your journey, Lori, what you guys have built together. Where can people find you?
Yeah, tune into the Chris Harder Show and come find me on Instagram at Chris W. Harder.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Ro.
Appreciate
it.
Thanks
for having me. Actually, thanks for being on here. That's it for today's episode of the Profitable Husband Podcast. If you're ready to step up, support your wife, and build real wealth together, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss what's next. For more strategies on business, marketing, and becoming the strongest leader in your household, follow me on Instagram at WillowKai. And if today's episode hit home, share it with another man who needs to hear this. We're building a movement one profitable husband at a time. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next episode.